Hello there, beautiful people. How are you doing today? Alright, we're back with another one, and this one's gonna be exciting. We're gonna do a form in a different way, so not in the traditional way that you see usually. And what we have is just a simple form, and when you click on next, it's gonna throw an error, the background is gonna change, and yeah, if we do a valid input here, it's gonna turn green again, and we are prompted to our next form. And here, as you can see, if I just add random text, it's not gonna work because it's not a valid email. As you can see here, it's gonna say, please include a round in your email address. We're gonna do that. We're gonna say, don't judge me, this is my old email that I used. And I used Rhino because I cannot see that well in the distance, just as rhinos. All right, moving on. So if we hit next, it's gonna go to our next form, and here we're gonna add a password, and it's gonna say thank you, and the form has been submitted. All right, so let's get into it. We're gonna do it fully on vanilla JavaScript, so that's all you're gonna need here. So this is what I have here. I just have a empty HTML with some CSS linked and some app.js, which are all empty. Well, besides the margin and box sizing that we do always. All right, so let's open up our live server here. So we're gonna click this, and I'm gonna drag this here. Actually, before we do that, another thing that we need, as you can see, we had those icons there. So for that, we're gonna go to Font Awesome, which is free and it's amazing. Well, there is a pro version, but for what we're gonna be using it for, the free version is gonna be enough. So start using for free, hit that button, and then you're gonna get this big link here. So we're gonna copy right down here. We're gonna go above our style.css, paste that sucker in, and yeah, that's all we need. So here we're just gonna search for a few icons in just a second. So let's go in our body here, leave some spaces like that, and all we need here is just the form, and we're not gonna submit this one for now. We're just gonna build out the UI for it. And here we're just gonna have the fields. So I'm gonna create a div for each field. So we're gonna say dot, and we're gonna say field. This is gonna be the name field, okay? So the username. Hit enter, and here we're gonna need, well, in the middle, we're gonna need an input type text, and we're gonna add a placeholder of username, like so. And we're also gonna do required here. And what I'm gonna do is basically add a icon above and an icon below. So let me search. So we had, I believe I searched user here, and I got one. Yeah, this one. All right. So I'm gonna click on this one, and it's gonna give me an I tag here, which I can copy just by clicking it. Boom, it's gonna do the shaky shake. We're gonna paste it up here, and then we're gonna paste below something called arrow. So we're gonna search for arrow, and it's gonna give us, let's go with this one, arrow down. Click on this one and copy this as well and paste it down below here. For our next one, we're gonna do another div called field, and we're gonna call this email. So field email, like so. Hit enter. We're pretty much gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna change the type text to type email. And we're gonna do placeholder, we're gonna say email here, and required. And for this one, we can just copy the last one here, because we're gonna be using the same. And above here, I searched for key, I believe. Oh, there are multiple ones you can use, but this one, actually, no, wait, this is the password one. So we're gonna need mail, like this. And we're gonna get let's go with envelope here. Click on envelope, copy this, and paste it above. Great, and the last one is gonna be called field password. And for this one, we're gonna use the key. So let me just copy paste this from here down here. Actually, this one as well. So the arrow down, it's gonna repeat itself. And above here, let's change this to password. We're gonna change the placeholder for password. And up here, we're gonna add that beautiful looking key. This one, click on this one, copy the HTML and paste it up here, and that's That's all the forms we need. And the last one is just gonna be a thank you one, which I'm gonna call field, let's say finish, okay? And here I'm gonna do let's do a paragraph, and we're just gonna say thank you. I believe I added some hearts here, so let's search for a heart, because we love those form submissions. Let's click on the heart, and I'm gonna use 2 of these. So I'm gonna copy, and let's go above, like so, and below. All the hearts, great. Actually, I put this outside. Let me put it inside here. Save. All right, good. That's all we need. So now we can actually pull up our CSS. We can close. We're not going to work with our HTML anymore. And now we can move this here. So you should have this right now. All right, good. Let me close this up as well, just so we have more space going on here. And what we need to do is we're going to select the body, since we only have a form element inside it, and I'm going to add a height of 100 VH to this, like so. Hit save. We're going to add a display flex, and the content here is not going to flow like this because I'm just doing it we have only one child, which is the form in our body. As you can see here, it's just the form, so we're not affecting the elements inside here. I just want to position this basically in the center. So all I need to do is let's add a background color, which we're going to use actually multiple times. Color, and I chose a green here. You can choose whatever you want, but I think this looks pretty good. So 87, 189, and 130. Hit save on this. We're going to have that. And one other thing I need here is to add transition. We're going to transition the background of this 0.5 seconds ease, like so. And I'm also going to add a position relative to this, like so, because what I want to do is actually move all these elements on top of each other in the center. So this is why we add position relative to the body. So now what we can do is we can grab every element in the form and just place it in the same position. So to do that, all we have to do is say, we're going to select all the fields. So field name, and we're going to do field email, field password, and field finish, like so. We're going to add a position absolute to this, like so. We're going to add a top of 50% and the left of 50%. Now, why do we do this, and why don't we just add position center here, you know, with display flex position center and justify content center? Well, because we are not gonna display none on these other elements. We're just gonna place them on top of each other, and I'm gonna add opacity 0, and I'm gonna remove all the pointer events so that we can animate them in very smoothly and easily. So that's the reason why we are not adding justify content center here and align item center. And so we can manipulate and animate these way easier. So we have this right now, which looks horrible. And the reason why this is not centered, even though we added top 50 and left 50, is because, well, it's technically centered because our elements do start in the middle here. It just, the width and everything just goes like this, right? So what we have to do is basically translate this back 50%. So how big the element is, we want to move it back by 50%, and then it's going to be perfectly centered. So for that, all you have to do is say transform, translate, and we're going to say minus 50% on X and Y, like so. So then it's going to be perfectly centered. Good. So this is going a bit crazy here, but we're going to fix it in a bit. Let's also add a background color. So on top of the div, not the actual input. So across all the div, we're going to add a white. So we're going to see our thing here. All right, let's also add a height of 50 pixels and a width. Let's go for 100 pixels. All right, just so we have something to work with here. Good. Now, the other thing that we need to do is, well, actually, you know what? let me just hide. Actually, we're gonna do that later. Let's add display flex to this as well, like so. So the elements within these divs, again, what's happening right now is just all the elements are placed on top of each other. All right. So here, I'm just gonna take all of these and display them flex. I'm gonna add a space between to each. So justify content space between, like so. And I'm also gonna add an align item center here, like so. So there we go. That's what we have right now. Let's also add a border radius to this. So we're gonna say border radius to make the corners a bit more round, like so. Good. And I'm also gonna add a transition all to this because we're gonna transition them fading out and fading in later on. So I'm just gonna say all 0.5 seconds and ease here. Another thing we need to affect is I want to add some padding to these. So I'm just going to copy paste all of these up here, and I'm just going to add an I next to each one, like so. So I want to make sure that all the I tags in our HTML are going to have a padding of 10 pixels, like so, and let's add a cursor pointer to this, like so, just so they have a bit of space. Good. All right. Probably a better thing is going to be, well, we don't really need to click this one. So maybe add a class on this one and just add pointer events to that. But I don't want to make the tutorial so long, so I'm just going to skip that part. But definitely, like, this doesn't really need a point to be a pointer. But yeah, that's what we have so far. And down here, we're actually going to add the two classes that are going to transition in and transition out. So what we're going to say is we're going to add a div called inactive, like so. We're going to add the opacity to 0, and we're going to add the pointer events to none. All right. So opacity 0 is just going to make it disappear. However, you can still click on it even though you cannot see the element. So if we add pointer events none, then we cannot even click on it. So the last thing we need is actually we need to transform this and move it a bit down. All right. And then when it's active, it's going to come in like so. So for that, we're just going to add the transform, translate, like so. And we cannot do translate X or Y or something like this because we're going to overwrite this one up here. So I need to take this actually, and we're just going to add so this one is minus 50%, and we're only going to modify this one. All right, so the Y. And the Y, let's just add 50% to this. All right, like so. All right, another thing that we need is the active. So we're going to say div active is going to be opacity 1. Our pointer events are going to be all, so we can click on it, and the transform translate is going to go back to that original that we have up here. All right, so the original position. Good. Another thing that we actually need is to add inactive to our forms that are not active. Wow. So let's go back to our HTML here a bit. I'm going to full screen this. And so what do we have inactive? Let's see here. So our first should be untouched, and then our email should be inactive. So field email, we're going to add inactive to this, like so. This one is going to be inactive as well. Well, basically all the other elements should be inactive except for the first one, like so. So now we have the first element here, as you can see, the user. Good. And this kind of looks ugly, so let's also fix that. So for that, all we have to do is basically go to our CSS and just modify the inputs here. So we're going to say field name again. We're going to grab the input. We're going to add a comma and just the email as well and the password, like so. Good. So we have all the three. And to cut this out, all we have to do is say, well, to basically remove the border and everything, all we have to say is background none, like so. We're gonna remove the border, and we're gonna say none, again, none. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna leave this on the blue thing a bit, just so we can see what's happening. We can add flex 1 to this, so it's gonna stretch all the way to the end, like so. And then we're gonna add a height of 100%, which is gonna stretch it all the way up there, just so everything is very easy and clickable. Now, if you wanna get rid of the blue border here, then we can just add outline, not here, here, we can add outline of none. And that should get rid of that thing as well. So there we go, we have all the styles, we have everything working, and the last thing that we need, actually we're gonna add it, I think, at the end. We're gonna add the shake effect at the end. So let's go into our JavaScript. Hit the app.js up in here. All right, we're gonna create a function called animated form, like so. And we're gonna call it all the way down here, animated form, like so. So what do we need in our animated form? Well, we need to get all these arrows. So to do that, all we have to do is say const arrows is equal to document.querySelector. We're gonna say query selector all, so we get all the 3 arrows. We're gonna say dot fa arrow down. All right, so we're getting this one from our HTML here. fa arrow down, which is this one. Good. So we have all of our arrows. Good. Now all we have to do is say arrows dot for each. So for each arrow, we're gonna say arrow here, we're gonna run a function like so. And what we need to do is attach an event listener to each arrow, and then we're gonna do some checking on whether the information we got from the user, the input, is correct or not, and if we should move on to our next slide or not. So here we're gonna say arrow dot add event listener. So we're gonna add a click on this, and we're gonna run a function like so again. And here we need to define a few things. We need to define what our next element is gonna be, so our next box, if our current box is okay, and if we should animate it out or not. So let's go one at a time, because this can be a bit tricky. So here we're gonna say const input. So what I want to do is basically get the input of the current box, okay? And how can we get the current box, the current input from this box? Well, if we write const input, so we create a variable, we can get the arrow here, right? The one we have access to, so the current arrow that we can click on, and we can say arrow.previous element sibling, all right? And if we console log this, we are gonna get, if we hit F12, I cannot click it anymore, let me drag this out a bit, we're gonna get the username input. So you're always gonna get the current input of where this arrow is now. So if we move on to the email, and when you click this, it's gonna get the email. Well, that's really good, because we can do validation checking on every input now very easily, just by having this previous element sibling. All right, that's good. Now, how do we animate the thing out? Well, what we can do is we can also get the parent of this arrow. So to do that, all we have to say is const parent is equal to arrow.parent element, which is gonna get, again, the next form, the field name or the field email. So it's basically gonna get the parent element of our I, okay? So if we console log this again, parent, it's gonna give us the, hit F12 again, this thing screws up again, And look at that, we got the whole field. So we can do whatever we want with this as well. All right, place this back like so. Actually, let's full screen this so we have more space. And the last thing that we need is the next form that's gonna come up. So to do that is we can actually go say next form is we can get the parent here, and then we can get its next sibling, next element sibling, like so, which is gonna give us the email form. All right, so even though we're here, it's gonna know what the next email form is, which is this one, right? So we're going up a level. So we start off from our arrow, we're gonna go up to our parent, and then we're gonna look at its sibling, next element basically. So that's how the process goes. And that's all the 3 things that we need. And now we can move on into doing the validation and everything. So here, what we can do is, well, let's start off with our user validation. So down here, what we can do is create a function called validate user, like so, which is going to take in a user input. So I'm just going to say user. And what we can do here is just, for this one, it's quite a simple validation. I didn't do anything too complicated. I just said if the user input that we're going to get back here, and we can access the value by writing dot value dot length, which is going to take a look at how long our input is, so how many characters we have in that input is less than 6, then we're going to throw an error. So we have to have at least 6 characters. And we can console log error here, or not enough characters, like so. And then we need to throw that error. And to do that, I actually created another simple function. So you can go down here and just say function error, and we're gonna add a color to this, like so. And here we can just do document.body.style .background color, so we can change its background color. And we're gonna set it equal to color. So now we can just add a color here randomly. So we can call it down in here in our validate user. So we can call error, and we can just stick a color in. So for this one, I used, make sure to use quotes here because it's a string. We're gonna say RGB 18987 and 87, double 87s. Cool. Else, so if this is correct, then we're gonna set it back to our green color that we have up here. So this nice green color. So again, if this is an error, then it's gonna throw this red color. Else, the error is gonna be green, like so. And we're also gonna return this true because we're gonna add this in the if statement up here. And that's all we need for this one. Good. So up here, let's try to test this out. So these are the check for validation that we're gonna do here. We're gonna say if input dot type. All right, so input is, it's gonna select the input, the current input. So if the input type is equal to text, and then we're, for the next ones, we're gonna do input type email, input type password. So that's how we're gonna check. And so if this is true, which it is currently, but also if validate user here, so we're gonna call this function, and we're gonna add the input up here, right? So we're gonna check its input. So this is gonna be true right now. And it's gonna also run this function, which is gonna go in here. So we supply the user input here. So from our user input, so the value from here is gonna go in here. It's gonna go in our if statement. It's gonna do this check. And if it gives us an error, then it's gonna go red. Else, it's gonna go green, and it's gonna return true. And if it returns true, then both of these values are correct, which means that we can move on and add the next box. All right, so we can transition this out. We know everything is okay. We can move on. So here we can just say console log, everything is okay. Hit save on this, and let's see, let's give this a shot. Full screen, hit F12, and if we hit next, nothing, yeah, there we go, it's gonna turn red, and it's gonna say not enough characters, as you can see there. And if we add some random text, it's gonna say everything is okay. Now we need to animate this out and animate our next form in. So to do that, actually we're gonna create a function called next slide, which is gonna take care of everything for us. So we can use it multiple times for each of our forms. So down here, anywhere you want, you can create a function called next slide. All right, this is gonna take the parent, so the current parent, and the next form that we have. So I kind of named them the same that we have up here. So what we need to do is, well, what do we need to do? Well, our current element, our current parent, we need to add a class list of add, and we're gonna add an inactive to this. So after everything is done, is it with, see, I'm not even sure. I think it's with one N, but cannot spell correctly, but it's okay. So, hey, if you did it with one N, you can message me that I'm stupid. That's completely fine. So we need to add the class of inactive because we know everything is okay, which is gonna fade it out. We need to remove the active from it. So we're gonna say parent.classList.remove active. And for our next form, so next form.classList.add, we're gonna add the active class. So this is gonna transition out, and this is gonna transition in. That's it. So up here, all we have to do, we can remove this console log, and all we need to do is say next form, and we can just add parent and next form. So the two values up here, the current parent and the next form. Let's see how that works. Let's go back here. It's gonna throw error. If we add something correct, then nothing happens. All right, let's see why not. Hit F12, and it's gonna say next form is not a function. So why is next form not a function? Well, it's because I named it next slide and not next form. So let's copy this, paste it here, hit save again. Let's give another test, and there we go. We have our animation going. Great. Now what we need to do is create a validation for our email. So for that, down here, we can add a function called validate email, like so. It's gonna take in an email. And here, we're gonna create a const validation, which is gonna be some regex. I'm gonna give you in the description. You can copy it and you can just paste it in. But what it's gonna do is just basically gonna check if it has around and all the other stuff an email needs. And if everything is correct, then it's gonna return true. So what we need to do is say if validation, like so, dot test, we can add a test and we can call email value. So the input that we're gonna get for our next email field, it's gonna test it against this regex here, and if that is correct, then we're gonna return true. So we're gonna say return true, and let's also add throw the error here, up here, and we're gonna say else, we're gonna throw the red error. Well, technically this is not an error, but I named them the same just so we can add the color. So this one is the green color, and it's gonna return true, everything is okay, and if it's not, then it's gonna throw this one. So all we have to do is up here, we're gonna say else if, and we're gonna say input type triple equals email, and we're gonna call, not validate user, but we're gonna call validate email, and we're gonna add the input value again. Again, this input always changes depending on which arrow we are on. So this is gonna be the input email already, and we don't really have to do anything because this works, everything just works so nicely here. So again, if this is going to be correct and it's going to check if it has the around and the dots and whatever the email form should have, then this is going to return true right here. So we said, hey, return this true if everything is okay. Oh, down here, my apologies. So here it's going to return true. So all this expression is going to be correct. So what we need to do here, again, just call next slide. And we're gonna say parent and next form again. Hit save. Let's give this a shot. Error. Good, works. Throws error. Let's add something random. It's not working. Let's try it with an around yahoo.com. And it works. Beautiful. And you know what, for the next one, let's just use the validate email again. So I'm gonna say else if validate username, I apologize. I just want the input type, if it's triple equals to password, then, and I'm just gonna do the validate user again. So I just wanna make sure it has at least 6 characters. That's okay for now. So I'm just gonna call input again and just say next slide, parent, and next form. Good. Let's see how this goes. And then at the end, we're gonna add the shake and everything is all right. So we're gonna call my Rhino thing again, yahoo.com. We're gonna hit next, everything works fine. We're gonna add a random, let's actually try this. Yeah, it throws an error and boom, we have the thank you. There we go. Now let's go back and add that beautiful shake. So in our style.css, scroll all the way down here. We're gonna call something called keyframes, and we're gonna call shake at 0%. We're gonna define 50% and 100%, like so. Here I'm gonna call transform. Now make sure to add the old transform that we have here, up here, because if we don't, then it's gonna overwrite it and it's only gonna rotate. It's not gonna be -50, -50 anymore, and it's gonna do some weird motions that you probably don't want. So I'm just gonna call translate here, -50% and -50%. So I just wanna make sure I have this value here, and I'll add the rotate here. So I'm gonna say 0 degrees. I'm gonna copy paste this down here. I'm gonna change it to 10 degrees, and here we're gonna go back to 0. Good. Let's go back to our app.js, and for the rotate, for the shake thing, all we need to do is else here. So if nothing is correct here, then our parent.style.animation is gonna be equal to a shake, 0.5 seconds with an ease. Hit save. Let's see, do you shake? It does shake. Now the problem is if we click again, nothing is gonna happen, is because we already added the animation to it. So if we add it again, well, nothing's gonna happen. So if you really wanna get rid of that, all you need to do is, let me define here, get rid of animation. We can just grab the parent again and say add event listener, and we're gonna call something animation end, and we're gonna run a function which is basically just gonna remove the animation. Parent.style.animation is equal to nothing, like so, empty strings. So whenever this ends, oh, I added a valid one there. When this ends, it's gonna reset. So if we hit F12, we're gonna see everything resetting here. Elements, there we go. Close this one. Oh, never mind. And if we go to our form, this one, we're gonna see the animation getting added, and as soon as it finishes, it gets removed. So there we go. Add something, boom, boom. Everything works nicely. hope you enjoyed this one. Now, if you want to improve this, since this is running kind of long anyway, what you can do is add maybe a text up here that says, hey, something is wrong, so the user knows what's going on. So for that, maybe you can create an element and you can change its text content based on which error you have. Another cool thing is maybe you can do a progress bar. So you can have 3 dots, and once you fill one in, it's going to get filled in. So for that, maybe just add a counter here somewhere. And as soon as you reach to the next slide, you can increment that counter, or just increment or just add a class to those buttons, just so it gives the user a clear example of where they are on the page. And also the error checking of displaying the actual error is probably very, very good to do. But we are like 35 minutes in, so I don't want to keep you for too long, but hopefully you like this. Hopefully you like this animation, this cool effect. And yeah, that's it for me today. Thank you again so much for watching. I'm kind of thinking of what to do with that JavaScript series, because I'm not sure if I want to do like a multiple part series, or I should do like one big like 2-hour JavaScript tutorial. So I'm still thinking about that. If you have any suggestions, you can also leave it down in the comments below. Again, thank you so much. Please drop a subscribe. Let's hit that 1K this January, would be awesome. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.